I never thought I'd become the kind of person who could smile while watching someone's world burn. But then again, I never thought my best friend would sleep with my fiancé in my own bed. The memory of that night still plays in my head, like a movie I can't stop watching. I came home early from my business trip, excited to surprise Cameron. The house was dark except for the bedroom light. I heard laughter. Her laughter. Valerie's laughter. I pushed open the door and there they were, tangled in my sheets, in my space, destroying everything I'd built. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't throw things or demand explanations. I just stood there for 3 seconds, let them see me, then turned and walked away. My face was calm. Inside, something cold and sharp clicked into place. That was their first mistake. They thought I'd fall apart. They had no idea what was coming. The next morning, my phone exploded with calls and messages. Valerie's name flashed on the screen 17 times before noon. I let every single call go to voicemail. I deleted her texts without reading them. Cameron tried too, leaving long, rambling messages about how it wasn't what it looked like, how he could explain everything. I listened to exactly 5 seconds of the first one before deleting the rest. Silence is a weapon most people don't know how to use. But I did. I understood that silence creates panic. It makes guilty people imagine the worst. While they scrambled and worried about what I might do, I was already 3 steps ahead. I called my lawyer that afternoon, not to yell or vent, but to ask calm, specific questions about protecting my assets. I owned the house. The car was in my name. Everything that mattered was mine. I just needed to keep it that way. By the end of the first week, I had a plan mapped out in my journal. Not a revenge fantasy scribbled in anger, but a real strategy with timelines and specific goals. I wasn't interested in dramatic confrontations or public scenes. Those were messy and unpredictable. I wanted something cleaner, more permanent. I wanted to rebuild my life, so completely that they became irrelevant. But first, I needed to secure my foundation. I met with my financial advisor and moved money into accounts only I could access. I changed the locks on my house. I updated my will and beneficiary information. Every legal connection to Cameron got severed, one document at a time. My coworkers noticed I seemed distracted, but I blamed it on stress from a big project. Nobody knew the truth yet. That was intentional. The longer I kept this private, the more control I maintained over the narrative. 3 weeks after that night, I started showing up at the same coffee shop where Valerie met her work friends every Thursday morning. I'd sit 2 tables away, reading a book, sipping my latte. She'd freeze when she saw me. Her friends would glance over, curious about the tension. But I never looked directly at her. I never acknowledged her presence. I just existed in her space, calm and unbothered. It drove her crazy. I could see it in the way her hands shook when she lifted her cup, and how she'd leave earlier than usual. Good. I wanted her uncomfortable. I wanted her wondering what I was thinking, what I might do next. Cameron tried to approach me at the grocery store once. I saw him coming down the aisle and simply turned my cart around and left through a different exit. No words, no acknowledgement, just erasure. That hurt him more than any insult could have. Then Valerie finally cornered me. She showed up at my office building, waiting in the lobby until I came down for lunch. She looked terrible, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wrinkled clothes. The put-together woman I'd known for 8 years had disappeared. She grabbed my arm as I walked past. Please, we need to talk. I'm worried about you. I looked down at her hand on my sleeve, then up at her face. My expression stayed neutral, almost bored. There's nothing to talk about, Valerie. We're done. Her eyes filled with tears. But we've been friends since college. You can't just throw that away. I pulled my arm free gently. I didn't throw anything away. You did. That night. In my bed. Then I walked out into the sunshine, leaving her standing there. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. I was in complete control. For months after the betrayal, something unexpected happened. I got promoted. The senior management position I'd been working toward for 3 years suddenly opened up when my boss retired early. I applied, interviewed, and landed it. The timing felt like the universe finally balancing the scales. My salary jumped by 40%. I got my own office with windows overlooking the city. Suddenly, I had real power at the company. The first week in my new role, Valerie called my work line. She'd never called me there before. Her voice sounded small, desperate. I heard about your promotion. That's amazing. I was wondering if maybe you had some advice about my career. I feel stuck. I lean back in my leather chair, looking out at the skyline. I don't think I'm the right person to help you with that, Valerie. Good luck, though. I hung up before she could respond. The smile on my face felt dangerous. I started attending the same industry networking events where Valerie tried to build her professional connections. But now I wasn't just another face in the crowd. I was the newly promoted senior manager everyone wanted to meet. People gravitated toward me, asking for my insights, my business card, my time. Valerie would stand in the corner, watching me shine in spaces where she used to feel confident. I never approached her, never acknowledged her, but I made sure my success was impossible to ignore. At one event, I gave a presentation about leadership strategies. Valerie sat in the third row, taking notes. Afterward, people swarmed me with questions and compliments. I saw her trying to push through the crowd, probably wanting to talk. I smiled at everyone else, answered their questions, then left through a side exit before she could reach me. Leaving her behind felt powerful, addictive even. Cameron tried a different approach. He sent me a letter, an actual handwritten letter, delivered to my house. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. His handwriting looked shaky, uncertain. The letter rambled for 3 pages about his mistakes, his regrets, how he'd been confused and weak. He blamed stress from work, pressure from his family, everything except his own choices. The last paragraph begged me to meet him for coffee, just to talk, so he could explain properly and apologize in person. I read it twice, then did something I knew would hurt him more than any angry response. I didn't reply at all. Not a text, not an email, nothing. Complete silence. A week later, he sent another letter asking if I'd received the first one. I never answered that either. Let him wonder. Let him imagine me reading his pathetic excuses and deciding he wasn't even worth responding to. Because that's exactly what happened. My career continued climbing while they're stagnated. A major project came up at work, one that required cross-company collaboration. My boss asked me to lead it. The budget was huge, the visibility enormous. This was the kind of opportunity that could define a career. I threw myself into it completely, working late nights and weekends. The project succeeded beyond anyone's expectations. We came in under budget and ahead of schedule. Leadership noticed. My name got mentioned in board meetings. Articles about the company's success included quotes from me. Meanwhile, I heard through mutual acquaintances that Valerie had been passed over for a promotion she desperately wanted. Cameron's small business had lost its biggest client. Their lives were shrinking while mine expanded. I didn't cause their failures directly. I didn't need to. They were destroying themselves with their own guilt and poor decisions. I just made sure I wasn't there to save them. 6 months after that terrible night, Valerie showed up at my house. I watched through the window as she sat in her car for 15 minutes, gathering courage. When she finally knocked, I considered not answering. But something made me open the door. She looked worse than before. She'd lost weight. Her clothes hung loose on her frame. I know you don't want to see me, she started, her voice cracking. But I need to tell you something. I'm struggling. Really struggling. Work is falling apart. I can't sleep. I can't focus. Everything is collapsing and I don't know what to do. I leaned against the doorframe, my face expressionless. Part of me, a small buried part, felt a flicker of sympathy. We'd been best friends once. But then I remembered her in my bed, in my house, betraying everything we'd built. That sounds difficult, I said flatly. But I'm not sure why you're telling me this. Her eyes widened. Because you're the only person who might understand. You've always been so strong, so capable. Please, just talk to me. Help me figure this out. I shook my head slowly. No, Valerie. I can't help you. You made your choices. Now live with them. I closed the door in her face and listened to her cry on my porch for 10 minutes before she finally left. The public humiliation came naturally. I didn't have to orchestrate it. Valerie did it to herself. At a large industry conference, she gave a presentation that went disastrously wrong. Her slides malfunctioned. Her data was incorrect. She froze in front of 300 people, stammering and struggling. I wasn't even there, but 5 different people sent me messages about it. They knew we used to be close and thought I'd want to know. Each message described how painful it was to watch, how people in the audience whispered and cringed. Her professional reputation, already shaky, took a massive hit. 2 days later, someone posted a professional review online, criticizing her work on a recent project. The review was detailed, specific, and devastating. It wasn't me. I never wrote it. But the damage spread quickly. Other people added their own complaints. Within a week, her professional credibility was shredded across multiple platforms. I watched it happen from a distance, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. Cameron's attempt at manipulation came next. He cornered me at a mutual friend's wedding. I debated not going, but I refused to let them control my social life. He approached during the cocktail hour, his expression carefully crafted to look wounded and sincere. "I know you're angry," he said quietly, "but don't you think you're overreacting a little? It was one mistake. One night. We had 5 years together. Doesn't that count for something?" I took a slow sip of my champagne, letting the silence stretch. His face reddened. "You're making me look like some kind of monster. I'm not perfect, but neither are you. You were always working, always focused on your career. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to us, this wouldn't have happened." There it was, the blame shift, the attempt to make this somehow my fault. I smiled then, a real smile. "You're right, Cameron. I was focused on my career, on building something real and lasting, while you were busy destroying everything we had. Thanks for clarifying that." I walked away before he could respond, leaving him standing alone by the bar. I started building strategic alliances. People Valerie had worked with, networked with, relied on. I wasn't obvious about it. I didn't badmouth her or spread rumors. I simply became the better option. When someone needed a referral, I was helpful and professional. When opportunities came up, I made sure the right people thought of me first. My reputation grew organically because I was genuinely good at what I did. But the side effect was that Valerie's network slowly became mine. At an industry dinner, I sat next to a woman who used to mentor Valerie. We talked about career development, leadership strategies, innovation. The conversation flowed easily. At the end of the night, she handed me her card and suggested we collaborate on a project. I saw Valerie watching from across the room, her face pale. That connection had been hers once. Now it was mine. I didn't steal it. I earned it by being better. Valerie's job situation deteriorated rapidly. I heard from reliable sources that her boss had called her into his office multiple times to discuss performance issues. She was making mistakes, missing deadlines, showing up late. Her work quality had dropped dramatically. The confident, capable woman I'd known in college had disappeared, replaced by someone anxious and scattered. Part of this was probably guilt. Part was likely depression. But I felt no sympathy. She'd made her choices knowing exactly what she was risking. Every consequence she faced now was deserved. I wasn't causing her problems. I wasn't sabotaging her work or spreading lies. I was simply succeeding in the same spaces where she was failing. My presence reminded her constantly of what she'd lost and what she'd become. That was punishment enough. I didn't need to do anything else. Just existing and thriving was destroying her. The final confrontation happened on a cold November evening. Valerie showed up at my office building just as I was leaving for the day. She looked desperate, wild-eyed. "Please," she grabbed my arm. "Please, you have to help me. I'm about to lose my job. My life is falling apart. Everything is broken. I know I don't deserve your help, but I'm begging you. Please, just tell me what to do. Tell me how to fix this." I looked at her hand on my sleeve, then at her face. For 8 years, this woman had been my closest friend. We'd shared everything. Dreams, fears, late-night conversations, early morning coffee runs. She'd been at my graduation, my first job celebration, every important moment of my adult life. And she destroyed all of it in one selfish decision. You want me to fix your life? I asked quietly. She nodded frantically. Yes, please. I can't do this alone anymore. I need you. I pulled my arm free gently. No, Valerie. You need to live with what you did. I'm not your savior anymore. I'm not your friend. I'm nothing to you now. Just like you're nothing to me. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away. In my rearview mirror, I saw her collapse onto the curb, shoulders shaking. I didn't look back again. I arranged a meeting with key stakeholders at Valerie's company, not to sabotage her directly, but to discuss a potential partnership between our organizations. During the meeting, natural questions came up about team capabilities and project management. I answered honestly, professionally. I mentioned concerns about reliability and follow-through, speaking in general terms, but knowing exactly who they'd think of. The seed was planted. Nothing explicit, nothing that could be traced back to malice. Just honest professional assessment that happened to highlight weaknesses they already knew existed. 2 weeks later, I heard Valerie had been put on a performance improvement plan. The corporate kiss of death. Everyone knew what that meant. She had maybe 2 months before they found a reason to let her go. Her career, the thing she'd worked so hard to build, was crumbling, and I'd barely lifted a finger. I'd just let the truth speak for itself. The ripple effect spread wider than I'd anticipated. Cameron lost his business. The stress of everything had destroyed his focus, his reputation, his client relationships. Word had gotten around somehow about what he'd done. People in our tight-knit professional community talked. They chose sides. Most chose mine. His credibility evaporated. Without clients, his small consulting firm collapsed. He had to take a job working for someone else, making a fraction of what he used to earn. Valerie, meanwhile, was increasingly isolated. Mutual friends stopped inviting her to gatherings. Not because I asked them to, but because being around her became uncomfortable. She represented something toxic, a reminder that betrayal had real consequences. People didn't want that energy in their lives. She'd text me occasionally, long rambling messages about how alone she felt, how everything had gone wrong. I never responded, not once. She was screaming into a void, and I was the void that no longer cared. Valerie lost her job on a Tuesday in February. I know because 3 different people told me. She'd been escorted out of the building with her belongings in a cardboard box. The classic corporate humiliation. All her work connections, her professional identity, her source of income gone in one afternoon. She'd done it to herself. The missed deadlines, the poor performance, the inability to focus. All consequences of her own choices, spiraling out of control. I felt something when I heard the news. Not quite triumph, but close. A cold satisfaction. A sense of the universe finally balancing itself. She'd taken something precious from me that night. Now she'd lost everything precious to her. Her career, her reputation, her self-worth. Even Cameron had apparently stopped taking her calls. The affair that destroyed my engagement had destroyed their relationship too. They couldn't even find comfort in each other. They'd burned everything down for nothing. That was almost poetic. I decided to take a trip. 3 weeks in Europe, traveling solo, celebrating my freedom and success. I'd always wanted to do this, but had put it off because of Cameron, because of building my career, because of 1,000 reasons that no longer mattered. Now I could go anywhere, do anything. I posted photos from Paris, Rome, Barcelona. Beautiful scenery, incredible food, me looking happy and free. I knew Valerie would see them. We weren't connected on social media anymore, but mutual friends would show her. Let her see what a life without guilt and betrayal looked like. Let her understand what she'd given up. Before I left, she sent one final text. Please come back. Please help me. I don't know how to fix my life. You always knew how to fix things. I need you. I read it in the airport lounge, boarding pass in hand. I typed out a response but deleted it. Then typed another and deleted that too. Finally, I put my phone in my bag without responding and boarded my flight to Paris. She needed to learn that some things can't be fixed. Some bridges, once burned, stay burned forever. I came back from Europe glowing, tanned, relaxed, completely at peace. My career was thriving. My promotion had led to another opportunity. I was being considered for a director-level position. My life had transformed completely in the 11 months since that terrible night. Everything I touched turned to gold. Meanwhile, Valerie's life had become unrecognizable. She'd moved back in with her parents. At 32 years old, she'd lost her apartment, her independence, everything. Mutual acquaintances said she wasn't doing well. Depressed, isolated, barely functional. Cameron had moved to another city, running from the wreckage of his reputation. They both disappeared from my world completely. Not because I'd pushed them out, but because they destroyed themselves. My success wasn't about revenge anymore. It was just my life now. A good life. A life I'd built from the ashes of their betrayal. They thought breaking me would be easy. They'd learned otherwise. Valerie kept trying. Emails now, since I'd blocked her number. Long, rambling messages about how sorry she was, how she'd made terrible mistakes, how she understood if I never forgave her, but please, just give her some advice on how to move forward. Each email more desperate than the last. I read them with cold detachment. The woman begging for my help barely resembled the confident friend I'd known. That person was gone, replaced by someone broken and lost. I should have felt sympathy. Maybe a normal person would have. But every time I considered responding, I remembered that night. Her laugh, his hands, my sheets, my home violated, my trust destroyed. No amount of apology could erase that. No amount of suffering on her part could balance those scales. She wanted me to save her. But I wasn't a life raft anymore. I was the person who'd learned to swim alone and found I preferred it that way. Her drowning wasn't my responsibility. It never had been. 1 year after the betrayal, I got the director position. Corner office, 6-figure salary, real influence in my industry. The formal announcement went out company-wide. Congratulations flooded in from colleagues, mentors, professional contacts. That evening, I went to the same restaurant where Cameron had proposed to me 3 years earlier. I sat at the same table, ordered the same wine. But this time I was alone. By choice. And it felt powerful. My phone buzzed. Another email from Valerie. The subject line read, "One last try." I deleted it without opening it. I'd read enough of her apologies and excuses. Nothing she could say would change anything. She'd had her chance to be my friend, to be loyal, to be trustworthy. She traded all of it for one night with a man who wasn't even worth it. Now she was facing the consequences while I was living my best life. That was justice. Perfect, cold, satisfying justice. The business world started recognizing my success. I was invited to speak at conferences, to write articles for industry publications, to mentor young professionals. My name meant something now. Respect, competence, leadership. Everything I'd worked so hard to build was finally paying off. At one conference, someone asked me about overcoming professional setbacks. I smiled and told a carefully edited version of my story. How I'd faced a major personal betrayal, but used it as motivation to rebuild stronger. How I'd learned that success was the best response to people who doubted you. The audience loved it. They didn't know the full story. They didn't know about Valerie sitting in her parents' house, unemployed and broken. They didn't know about Cameron running from his failures in another city. They just saw a successful woman who'd overcome adversity. That was enough. That was all they needed to see. The messy truth behind my triumph could stay buried forever. 2 years after that night, I ran into Valerie's mother at the grocery store. She recognized me, her face crumpling with emotion. "Valerie's not doing well," she said quietly. "She's been struggling with depression, can't seem to get back on her feet. I know what she did was terrible, but she's still suffering so much." I nodded politely, my face neutral. "I'm sorry to hear that." Her mother grabbed my arm, desperate. "Could you maybe call her? Just once? I think hearing from you might help. She talks about you all the time, about how she destroyed the best friendship she ever had." I gently removed her hand from my sleeve. "I don't think that would be helpful for either of us. I wish Valerie well, but we've both moved on to different lives." That was a lie. I hadn't moved on. I'd moved up. There's a difference. I walked away from her mother, my head high, my conscience clear. I'd done nothing wrong. I'd simply protected myself and built a better life. If Valerie couldn't do the same, that wasn't my problem to solve. Today, I stood in my corner office, looking out at the city stretched below me. 3 years since the betrayal. 3 years of strategic rebuilding, of setting boundaries, of refusing to be anyone's savior except my own. Valerie was still struggling somewhere. Cameron was still trying to resurrect his failed career. And me, I was thriving. I'd won everything I'd fought for. My career, my independence, my self-respect. Some people might call me cold, unforgiving, harsh, but they didn't live through what I lived through. They didn't stand in that doorway watching their world shatter. They didn't have to rebuild from nothing while everyone watched and waited for them to break. I didn't break. I transformed. I became someone stronger, harder, more focused. Someone who understood that forgiveness was optional but success was essential. Valerie wanted me to fix everything I'd ruined, but I hadn't ruined anything. She had, and I'd simply refused to clean up her mess. That wasn't revenge. That was self-preservation. And I'd never apologize for surviving.